Good evening, namaskar, adab. Warm welcome to a special edition of Talk to Bhupen. Every day, over these last couple of weeks, we've been bringing you up to speed with stories that actually matter to you. Now, on a day when there is a serious question mark on the money that you have invested in Indian stock markets, on whether this money is safe or not, and at a time when I'm sorry to say that conventional media platforms are all hyperventilating about issues which have no direct relevance to you, it's important on this platform, as we move from TV studios to our virtual studios, it's important to start putting the focus on issues that directly matter to you. It's a very serious subject that we have today. We're talking about Indian money, Indian citizens' money, over 28,000 crore rupees stuck in debt funds. Top debt fund shut shop in India. I mean, imagine what's happening in India if Franklin Templeton Fund has decided to shut its shop. How does it impact you? How does it impact me? Special poll we have tonight as well. Sea-Water founder Yashwant Deshmukh has done a special poll for us, and he's joining us. He'll be joining us live from Dubai to tell us exactly what people are making out of this entire controversy. It's a straight question that I have. It's a straight question that we have. At 8:15 p.m., we'll put this poll up. But before that, we want to know how will this shutting down of this Franklin Templeton Fund, 6 top funds shutting down, is there a serious question mark today against India's stock markets? Lockdown 2.0, and yesterday we were looking at the scenario that are we in maybe for lockdown 3.0. How is this going to impact Indian stock markets and investors' confidence? Very special panel today. Mukesh Bhutani, one of the foremost market experts, market voices here with us live. Siddharth Jarabi, my old friend and colleague, is there. And there is Yashwant Deshmukh. He'll be bringing us up to speed with his poll in a short while from now. Warm welcome, gentlemen. Let me straight away begin first with you. Mukesh bhai, it's a straight question. How safe is the money today on a day when 6 top funds have shut down? Can you give us a straight answer today?
Well, I will, but before I do that, let me just explain to you when you use the word shut shop, what it actually means in the context of the Franklin Fund controversy. What the fund has done today is that it is saying that due to redemption pressure, the fund will no longer allow for redemption, which means that the existing investors doesn't mean that they will go bust. Essentially, what it means is that because of the manner in which the fund couldn't handle the redemption pressure, it will have to wait for many of the investments that they have made to mature. Now, why has that situation occurred? It is one very specific to these 6 funds. If you look at it, out of $7.5 billion that this fund had, because of the consecutive redemption pressure in the last 6 to 9 months, the fund size has been reduced to $3.5 billion. What does a fund typically do when there is redemption of that magnitude? It's very simple. It's like, if you have a bank that's running and every fixed deposit holder goes and seeks to break his deposit and take the money back, obviously the bank is going to go bust. So that is what seems to have happened. Now, there are a variety of reasons for that. This fund was investing largely in high yielding assets. It is debatable what the quality of those assets are, but it is very much common in markets to invest in funds that give you high yielding returns. It had exposure. It had booked significant losses on papers that it had bought. Z and Yes Bank were 2 of the important investments. So there was a redemption pressure even before the COVID crisis happened. Now the redemption pressure was of magnitude where the fund found it very difficult to go back and not fulfill the commitments towards its investors. So it has stopped the redemption, which also means that the fund manager activity moves to the trustees, and for all future maturity that will occur, that will depend on the fund's ability to be able to go and liquidate those assets.
Right. But look, the question which is being raised, Mukesh, the question is that, is this move which has been made by Templeton, and you're saying that there is a specific reason, there is a specific context, maybe with this fund, and maybe the signs are all there, but does it not impact the mutual fund industry as a whole as well? Because other agencies may also have been invested in this group.
No, fund. I don't think so, because as I mentioned, it's specific to this particular fund. So now let's look at the question the decision of the fund manager. Should the fund manager have taken this call to be able to suspend all redemption? Well, firstly, the fund document gives the right to the fund manager to take this call. These calls are typically taken in a situation to prevent distress selling, because if the redemption pressure had increased in this environment, the fund manager would have landed up liquidating many of its assets at significant losses. Because then what is happening is that the fund manager is not left with any option but to look at the diktat of the investors, because the investors are looking out for money, in which case there would have been distress selling of many of the high yielding assets in which the fund is invested. So the fund manager can take this call. If you look at the global track record of Franklin Templeton, it's phenomenal. It's one of the leading firms. And I think the decision that the fund manager has taken in this situation is sounding to me sensible, because otherwise the investors would have looked at more losses. Now, this does not mean that the investors who continue to be invested will lose their money. It means over a period of time, when the trustees of the fund start liquidating, that's the time the fund managers will be able to do the redemption, insofar as the investors are concerned who still continue to be invested in the fund.
All right. Siddharth Zarabi, come into the session here. And I'm given to believe, Siddharth, that there was a special briefing today which was done by Finance Ministry officials with journalists. What's the view in North Block? Is there a fear that this move that we have seen today could very well end up being the tipping point of the iceberg, despite very specific points being made there by Mukesh?
Well, Bhupen, just to sort of give you the background on one crucial aspect, it was not as if the Franklin Templeton closure of 6 specific schemes, because the entire business has not been shut down, is not a surprise for the Finance Ministry or for the regulators in concern. I can tell you and our viewers that, and this is on pretty much the best authority possible, that this matter had been brought to the attention of the powers that be at least 4 days ago. And I'll be very straightforward in this. And I think this entire episode raises a huge question, not on the Indian markets per se, the long-term viability of India as an investment destination, our internal capabilities. It's a huge regulatory failure. It is also a sign that perhaps the level of coordination that is needed during times of extraordinary financial crisis is not happening. And I'll tell you why I say this. In 2008, when the global financial crisis struck, at that time as well, there was similar situation of a liquidity pressure in meeting redemptions. When you have more than a few average normal amount of people trying to redeem and withdraw money from anything, from a bank, from a fund, or even stores, there is going to be a difficult situation. And in 2008, the Reserve Bank of India had at that time, in close coordination with the Finance Ministry, come out with a special window. This was not the only time, Bhupen. The second time was the 17th of July 2013. A second window was opened, 25,000 crore. And these special windows are not money, taxpayer money being given free. It is just oxygen being given at a time when a person is, or an entity is, so to say, starved of liquidity, and that money has come back. I would say, with all responsibility at my command, that this information was available. It was not a surprise to the powers that be. And I would squarely say that we should be asking questions of Mint Street, of the Reserve Bank of India, and the specific officers there as to why this issue was not addressed timely. Remember, I will repeat myself. I am not.
So that's one moment, because I think it's a very big point. It's a very big statement that you're making, that the mandarins at the Finance Ministry, at the Mint Street, if they knew then what were the steps which are being taken? And Mukesh, let me come back to you. And let me then ask you, if Siddharth is putting this kind of a scenario, tell me, if I myself am an investor in this fund, what should I be doing at this stage?
Well, if you are an investor and you did not redeem your investment, then you will have to wait, because it's not that you have lost your money completely. It is the trustees that have stepped in for the fund managers, who will take a call at an appropriate stage as to which are these bonds that need to be liquidated over a period of time. To Siddharth's point earlier, the situation in my view is not comparable to the 2008 crisis, simply because the exposure of large banks and funds to NBFCs was of a relatively different scale at that point in time. What has happened in the last 10 years is that the bank's exposures to NBFC is very high. So if you take the NBFC credit crisis, which has got accentuated as a result of the health crisis that we are comparing today, what can the RBI do? Well, the RBI has a most important function, which is the addressing the liquidity aspects. So we can separately debate whether all the steps that the RBI has taken in this environment, whether that adequately addresses the liquidity aspect or not. But I don't think that the RBI can, in my view, step into the shoes of the banks. So if large banks, despite RBI addressing the liquidity aspect, particularly by way of reduction in the rates, if large banks are not feeling confident in this environment, particularly as regards exposure to the real estate, then it is bound to impact NBFCs, particularly those that have an exposure to the real estate sector, and bound to impact such funds which are high asset yielding funds, which may be considered as the risky funds at this point in time. I just take a minute to address that.
Is my money safe for Mukesh? That's what we'd like to know.
If I was investor, I would say that my money is safe, but how much am I going to realize will depend on, over a period of time, how smartly these assets are sold. So I think, will I have a capital, will my capital get depreciated in the amount that I've invested? Perhaps yes. But that depreciation in my capital is not because the fund has suspended the redemption. That has happened because the fund landed itself in a class of assets or in a class of industry which was high risk industry.
Okay, a lot of questions coming in on my Facebook page as well as on my Twitter page. We'll take those questions as well. Everyone wants to know exactly how much money are we going to realize. Let's move on to the second part of the show tonight. There's a special poll which has been done by a dear friend, Yashwant Deshmukh, founder of Sea Water. And look at what he's finding out. Let me request both Siddharth Zarabi as well as Mukesh Bhutani to stay on for a moment. Welcome. Good evening, Yashwantji. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Good Absolutely.
Lovely, lovely. How nice. I mean, look at the advent of technology. After so many years of knowing you in TV studios, here we are in a completely new digital and virtual world, Yashwant.
Oh, yeah. So, it's nice to see you and nice to see Siddharth and other guests as well.
Hi. Lovely, lovely. So let me straight away, Yashwantji, pull up the slides, the survey that you have done.
Right.
As my producers put up the survey now, what I want to know from you, Yashwantji, is that what's the macro picture, the helicopter view that your survey actually shows us?
Well, the helicopter view shows that in the last 1 month or so, people have become more serious. The number of people who have been saying that, this entire episode of Corona thing is actually over-exaggerated, that number has gone down. People who have started taking it seriously, that number has gone up, number one. Number two, the overall optimism is still up. People still feel that they can go through this. And in fact, a large number says that, the worst is probably over. We are likely to get through this. However, apart from the fact that, Modi's popularity levels have been always high, and this all of a sudden, including the leadership column of governance in India has got tremendous approval level. I guess probably because these are the questions, Bhupen, which are not run standalone in India. Actually, with our academic colleagues, counterparts across the globe, there are questions which are within the same framework, are being run across the globe in more than 50 countries now. So probably on this particular trust in governance, I mean, if the government in India is dealing with Corona well, that number is among the highest, probably the best in the world in that way. However,
let's take it one by one. Let's take it one by one so that, our viewers can get a clear picture of exactly on what basis do you say this. So I'm looking at this first slide, the index of preparedness, and you're saying that there is an overwhelming sense that that Indian government has dealt with the scenario well. But Siddharth, let me bring you in for a moment, Siddharth, on the point being made by Yashwantji. The truth is, Siddharth, that the number of positive cases has only been increasing, by the day. Now, on one hand, the level of preparedness, according to this poll, looks good. But Siddharth, what I want to know is that the level of preparedness only about bringing in a lockdown? Other than the lockdown, what is the kind of preparedness the government has, Siddharth?
Well, I think the biggest question that is being asked now, and incidentally, we are pretty much on top of the first month of the lockdown, and there are serious doubts and apprehension as to how many days it will continue. We have seen different numbers being thrown, and it would be wrong to hazard a guess here or speculate. But to me, it's very clear that the index of preparedness, which is this very beautiful point and slide that Yashwant and the team have come up, I think the index of preparedness to exit from the lockdown will be extremely crucial. Bhupen, you might have seen my earlier tweet, which shows that there is pretty much a 80 to 85% drop in GST collections at the central level. Non-GST revenues are down. So we are staring at a government, both at state and center, which has probably a massive, unimaginable financial hole. And the same thing is happening to our large organized sector companies and the informal sector. Just one bit of data, because we have data persons and a tax expert on the panel. As much as 93% of India's employment is created in what is called the informal sector.
Right.
Just 7% is in the organized sector. Bhupen, you saw those 2 million people walking pretty much barefoot, desperately to go back to their gaon and ghar. That is the reality. And I think the exit from the lockdown is the most crucial thing. And the Prime Minister's meeting with the Chief Ministers in 4 days from now on the 27th will perhaps provide us inputs as to how long this lockdown will continue.
So Yashwantji, since you have you've actually spoken to the people, for these slides, and let's move on to the next slide, which will give us a better picture exactly of what people think. Index of complacency. So we've looked at what's the index of preparedness. Now comes the index of complacency. Explain to us, Yashwantji, what does this show?
Well, we had asked the question straightforward. Do you think that, this entire talk and the threat of Corona is exaggerated, or do you think it is for real? So we believe that those people who have been saying that it is exaggerated, it is no reason to follow the lockdown, no reason to follow the social distancing and a lot. These people were in majority a month back. And you can see that approximately around 1st of April, there was this transit. I would say India actually shifted into a kind of a perception shift all across India. No, this is serious. This is something important and we need to follow. So from there, all of a sudden, India went into a surplus mode of people who are concerned, who were not complacent anymore, who were ready to take it on, who were ready to go. And like that. And if you link this one with the previous slide, when we're talking about index of preparedness, which was directly a result of the question, Bhupen, that we asked people that how many days of ration, medicine, and or money do you have for you and your family to survive this lockdown? So when we started, almost like 90% of them said that, it's roughly about a week. But over a period of time, that number went up to 50%. So people stocked and everything. But my concern is precisely what you said and what Siddharth also actually indicated, that even today, as we are talking, there are more than 10% people who actually said they have only a day or two worth of ration or medications or resources available to sustain themselves. Now, that makes 1 in 10 Indian. That is the bottom of the pyramid that we are talking about. God forbid, even if 1% among them are like on a hand-to-mouth situation, that 1% in gross numbers in India, Bhupen, are 1.25 crores or 1.3 crores.
Right.
When we are talking about India's population, you see, globally, right now there is a disconnect because we are looking at the numbers which only tell us number of people who are infected or dead because of corona, without realizing that even 1% of ILI, like the one which you have right on your screen right now, the one of the preparedness, you can see the green line of a week getting down and rest of the stocking going up. But even if you're talking about a 1% population, India's population size is so huge that merely comparing the numbers in terms of total number of infections, total number of deaths, and the only comparable number, which is the test per million, TPM, as everybody is comparing. Now, if you can compare tests per million, why cannot you compare corona infection per million? Then you will know how good India has done.
That's a good question. But Yashwant, just hold on, because the other part of your survey, that is what we will talk about now as our producers pull up the next slide. You've also tried to figure out, and that really has been of great interest to me, in terms of what do people think? Are they going to get this coronavirus? Are they not going to get this coronavirus? On one hand, if the view is at the level of preparedness is fine. Look at this. How strongly do you agree or disagree that the threat from coronavirus is exaggerated?
That's the other slide. If you can put in that slide which you are talking about, that's the other one.
That's the other one.
That one talks about, are you afraid that you or your family member will get infected?
This one. Yeah. So what does this slide show, Yashwantji?
This slide, there is a panic. That was very interesting take. We were talking, on a show this afternoon, and one of the panelists actually said that the more the panic, the better. Because if you are watching at people getting more panic, that means actually they are realizing it's a kind of problem out there. However, I feel this is a different kind of scenario. I can say for sure, when I was doing the cross-tabulation of this particular question with the question of how well the government has done or like that, I could very well see there was a large section of people who could understand this is an important thing. This must not be taken as lightly. And even after that, there was confidence that, no, I'm not going to be infected. Now, that part of that sentiment was not because of complacency, I guess. That part of the sentiment was mostly because of the confidence that they could see that, okay, we are taking the step, we are in our homes, the entire country is doing their bit, and there was a confidence in governance that we will sail through.
Okay, so, hold on, just on that point, that there was confidence. Now, we'll stay with this slide. Let me just bring in Mukesh Bhutani on this one. Mukesh, there is a direct connect, no? See, now look at this slide, Mukesh. If on one hand, there is a feeling that I'm going to be impacted, me or my family members are going to be impacted by this coronavirus. On top of this, you have this uncertainty, which you then see in the stock markets via what's happening to Franklin Templeton Fund. What does it do to the larger investor psyche in this kind of an environment, then, Mukesh?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that in this environment, the sentiment is, very badly impacted. There's no doubt in anyone's mind about that. Also, when sentiment is bad, there is an element of panic selling that happens. But Want to relate this to what has happened to Templeton Franklin, then the answer would be very different, because that fund had issues that were very specific to those issues. Talking about
so
sentiment,
that may be the case, but I'm now trying to link it to this slide, because this tells you clearly. I mean, look at where we were, when you started off in the month of March. Look at where that green graph is. Is someone going to be impacted in my family or not? Strongly agree, disagree. Look at that, agree that I may get impacted is increasing. So more number of people believe that I could be impacted by this.
sure.
Does this, or how does this play out in market sentiments is what I want to know, sir.
Let's give a context to the market sentiment, right? I mean, today's newspaper, when the market closed yesterday, just in the month of April, the index was up almost 20%, even with the slight fall that we experienced today. This is month on month. The fact is that we experienced close to 35% fall in only calendar year 2020 by the end of March 31. By the end of March 31 would mean that we have just seen 11 or 12 days of nationwide shutdown. So what has changed the sentiment in April? You can attribute it to anything. You can attribute it to government's ability to be able to curtail, India's decision to have taken a call on nationwide shutdown at the fast pace. We all know where we lie insofar as economic parameters are concerned. Siddharth spelled out what is the impact on GST collection. Well, I think we're dealing with an unprecedented situation. If there is going to be a nationwide shutdown, there is no manufacturing, there is no production, there is no distribution. All this enterprise has is discharge of its obligation insofar as expenditure is concerned. So sentiment is obviously going to be low. But are you looking at the sentiment of the investors, or are you looking at the market sentiment? Because the market sentiment just solely measured in the month of April is positive largely. But what happened in the calendar year 2020, which includes the 3-month period for March 31, and it included only 11 days of shutdown, then the market sentiment was low, even before the COVID-19 crisis.
Okay, Yashwanji, if I look at this slide, Yashwanji, one way to look at this is that those who disagree that they'll be impacted by this coronavirus, and therefore I would say that those who are not panicking, in terms of pure numbers, does your survey say that the number of people who are not panicking is more than the number of people who are panicking at this stage?
Yes. Number of people who are not panicking is certainly more than the people who are panicking at the moment. And those who are not panicking, their number among them, I mean, let me put it this way. The proportion of people who are not panicking right now because of confidence level is much more than the number of people who are not panicking just out of nothing. So that makes me, I mean, I am an optimist person. I mean, that goes without saying. But when I look into the hard data, I try to understand why exactly people are saying and behaving the way they are saying and behaving. And I can see there is a great deal of optimism. I can certainly see. And that makes me confident that, yes, the economy is going to be a problem. I mean, you guys know it much better. But whenever the time comes in, you see, it's not just up to us. It's not just up to India. The entire world is going down that. When I look into the newspapers here in Dubai, I can see the way entire Middle East looking. I mean, look at the oil thing, that the way it is impacting the entire Middle East right now. The world is not going to be the same, Bhupen. We know for sure. The only place on this entire planet which is going to remain the same is Banaras. Otherwise, the world is not going to be the same.
I agree. Spoken like a good Banarsi. Spoken like a good Banarsi. But if that is the reality, Siddharth, I agree, Siddharth, that there is, global confusion. If America is not doing well, Europe is not doing well, let's not fool ourselves. India is also not obviously going to do well. But when I look at this index of panic, which has been plotted by Yashwanji, the number of people who agree that they're panicking, versus the number of people who disagree. I mean, they could be, there's not too much of a gap that I see. I mean, maybe a few percentages. I want to know, Siddharth, in this kind of a scenario, what is the viewpoint that you're picking up in North Block? Is there a feeling that you need to go towards lockdown 3.0? to ensure that this kind of panic which exists subsides more? What is it that you're picking up?
Well, you asked a question that is that almost brings me to the edge in terms of answering, but I'll hold back and not add to any index of panic at this point of time. What I want to add for our viewers from an index of panic point of view, Bhupen, and I'm sure Yashwant and Mukesh and all our viewers will also take note of this. What has happened? In the last 24 hours, we have seen news reports that both HCQ, hydrochloroquine, and remdesivir as drugs which were being seen as possible medicines to cure or control the infection have more or less both failed. Now, there is a third possibility left, which is Avigan, which is the Japanese drug. We know the status of what is happening as far as the vaccines are concerned. So at this point of time, if one were to take a fatalistic point of view, no drug is working. That's like a standard banner headline that you can put on any graphic plate and you can sort of talk about it anywhere. Now, retrofit this into the Indian situation. I think we all should say this and we should sort of pat ourselves on the back that a majority of Indians, and Yashwant would agree with me here, roughly 90% of India has done fantastically well in comparison to far more developed regions of the world with much higher literacy in self-imposing quarantine. Look at those visuals. Bhupen, think of those visuals from villages where the villages themselves have barricaded their villages.
Absolutely agree with Siddharth. Absolutely agree with Siddharth. And I have a point to make here, Bhupen, and I hope that all of you will agree with that. I said this to many people. The Prime Minister could have directly announced the lockdown. What was the reason that he went for that 1 day of public curfew and followed up by the banging and the celebration of that? He is a smart guy. You see, he actually made the people to own up the curfew. He made the people to own up this initiative. It was not a forced thing on them.
Which is why the level of people who are panicking is less than the number of people who are not panicking.
Exactly.
Which is why this figure that more people believe that, well, government has handled this
exactly. And guess what? If the lockdown would have been thrown directly on the people, then the number of people would have been panicking would have been through the roof right now.
I come in? Can I quickly come in, Bhupen, 30 seconds?
Yes.
Bhupen, we are clearly the only country in the world, and I don't mean this in a flippant sense, we are the only country in the world which straight away went in for the nuclear option when it came to fighting this war.
Right.
And since you said lockdown 3.0, I think the behavior of people across this country over the next 4 weeks, and I repeat, over the next 4 weeks, also because of the holy month of Ramadan coming up, will be very crucial with respect to the next steps as far as the spread of this infection is
concerned. I agree. I think that's a political question. But I see this story very clearly through the eyes of Yashwant Deshmukh's survey and what has been stated by Mukesh as well, that it's not as if that the India story is over. If we are thinking that stock markets is over, if we're thinking that Franklin Templeton story is going to have such a huge impact that everything will collapse, not happening. That's not
that's true.
Scenario. People are expressing faith in the kind of steps which have been taken. Gentlemen, what a great pleasure to have had all of you on this program. I can tell you on Facebook, so many questions coming up, people wondering whether plasma reports are working or not. Anurag Lal is saying confusion all around. The finance minister should clarify. I think the number of questions that people have is not going to subside. It is only going to increase more. What you can do to find out answers to these questions, you should be a part of this Talk to Bhupen platform. If you want information, if you want answers like what we've done today, this is where you need to be. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on Talk to Bhupen.
Right.
Good night.
Bye-bye.